minute. Yeah, okay. So this particular text was the utterance of a great being called Shantideva, who lived in the 8th century. Indian Acharya, Pandit, great being. So this particular text is the key text for our tradition, really, in investigating and developing compassion. Yeah, and even His Holiness the Dalai Lama praises this text greatly, saying that he even said once that if I have any compassion, it's on the basis of this text. He says, it's on the basis of this text that I possess any compassion that I may have. So anyway, it's something that is studied a great deal and taught a great deal in our tradition. It was kept alive by the Tibetans. The tradition died out in India, but Tibetans kept it alive. Yeah. So this is what we're looking at, and we've slowly been going through the text, and we've come to chapter 6, which is a very important chapter on developing patience. And in this, Shantideva is reminding us of the incredibly negative consequences of anger and how to overcome anger, basically. That's a major part of this chapter. So we got as far as verse 77. And today we'll also be looking at what His Holiness has to say about this. Okay, but we start with what we call the motivation and posture. So I think we're all familiar with posture. People online as well as those of us here. So let's have an upright posture and remember the significance of that. It's a sense of confidence, healthy self-confidence, dignity that comes from that posture. And the front of the body is naturally open, so we are willing to work with the world, work with others. It's kind of, one might say, open-hearted attitude, posture. So let there be a sense of stillness, a sense of being somewhat relaxed, so not tight or strained, but together with that also attentive, very attentive. So that combination of relaxation and attentiveness is quite important. And as we sit like this, we can remember we are most fortunate to be human beings and to still be alive, because this enables us to investigate very deeply, more deeply than any other form of life, the causes of happiness, causes of suffering, how to overcome suffering, and so forth, how to make one's life truly worthwhile, that we have the capacity to engage in right now while we are still alive. And when we open our eyes to the rest of the world, we see tremendous dissatisfaction, tremendous misery, actually, of all kinds. Which, from the Buddhist perspective, has as its root cause the inability to understand properly who we are, how we exist, how the world exists. It is mistaken perception based on ignorance. There's a grasping, a holding on very tightly to a sense of a self, I, a me, a mine. And this creates all the other disturbing emotions: anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, so forth. So we see how beings are caught up in that. At one point, early on in the text, Shantideva expresses really the sadness of seeing how beings, like all of us, who want suffering, who want happiness, yet are constantly creating the cause for sorrow, for the opposite of what we actually want, and how pitiful that is. So reflect on that, how beings are in a state of real dissatisfaction and torment in many cases due to many causes and conditions, and how wonderful it would be if they could be free of that. Not only how wonderful it would be, but how wonderful if oneself, could actually do something about it. One could be willing, courageous enough to engage in action that benefited others. So think by engaging in practices together here at Tushita and with the folks online, practices of some quiet reflection, meditation, some investigation of the text and discussion. Through that, may we generate so through that, may we generate the causes necessary for being of great benefit to others. So we'll start with some quiet time together, where we work on stabilizing this very unstable, flighty mind, which is so easily distracted. So we'll be taking the breath, normal breathing, as our object. Sensation of breath at the tip of the nostrils as we breathe in and out. A gentle awareness of that, not tight, not so that we develop tension, but a relaxed awareness of that. Being aware when the mind has been distracted by the thinking process, and letting go of those thoughts and gently coming back to the breath. And throughout the process, we can use the out breath as a way of further relaxing and letting go. A sense of dissolving with the out breath. So not having any great expectations or hope about anything, not worrying about anything in the past or jumping into the future, just trying to stay with the breath in the present moment. Okay, thank you. So again, welcome to everybody. Thank you for attending. So today we'll also be looking at some commentary by His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And if you remember the last verse we looked at, verse 76, said, should someone else find joyous happiness upon praising my enemy as an excellent person, why mine do you not praise him too, and likewise make yourself happy? I think His Holiness is, yes, that's using the Stephen Batchelor translation. Yeah. And here, His Holiness comments that having already dealt with how to respond without anger to harm or injury directed towards oneself, one's relatives and friends, he's now turning to how to deal with the anger that we feel when we hear our so-called enemies being praised by others, or when others speak highly of somebody we dislike. Yeah, that's very irksome to us, isn't it? We don't like that. We dislike that kind of news. We feel angry about it. And Shantideva points out one shouldn't do so. That's not the kind of attitude to adopt. So I'll just finish what His Holiness says about this. To be angry at hearing other people speaking highly of one's enemies is totally inappropriate, because if we look at it carefully, one will find that when somebody speaks highly of someone one does not like, at least in the mind of the person who is praising this enemy, there is some sense of fulfillment, some satisfaction. And that person is doing so because he or she feels joyous and happy about that enemy. And one should rejoice in that, because one's enemy has caused that other person to be joyful, happy, satisfied. So one should rejoice in that. And if possible, should also join in that praise rather than trying to obstruct it. That manner of relating to the situation is truly a source of joy. And it'll also help other people change their attitude towards one as well. Because someone who is capable of dealing with that kind of situation in that manner has much less of a problem with jealousy. And a person who has less of a problem with jealousy will truly be happier and more pleasant to associate with. Yeah. So then you can see how this goes counter to our emotional attitude of our normal reaction, right? Our habitual pattern, which is to be upset, totally based on an emotional reaction and not based on logical reasoning, and not based on looking carefully at the outcome of how we're behaving. We just simply behave in that old manner. So the reasoning given here is quite interesting to look at. It's powerful, actually. If only we were to let go of that initial habitual sense of dislike and aversion towards so-called enemy. Next verse, 78. It is said that others are made happy through being praised in this way. If in this way you don't want them to have this happiness, then since it's making them happy, you should cease giving wages and the like to your servants. Because that makes them happy, right? However, you would be adversely affected both in this and future lives. So, see, someone should feel, naturally, His Holiness says that I should feel jealous towards an enemy when he or she is being praised by others, because that praise will make my enemy happy. Therefore, of course, I'll be jealous, and of course, I'll dislike that praise. And Shantideva is responding by saying that if that is one's ground for being jealous of and being angry about that kind of act, then that means that what one dislikes is the existence of joy or happiness in another person. One is being unhappy at the fact that another person is having happiness or joy. And if that is the case, then why should we work so hard to please other people, doing all sorts of things for others in order for them to be happy? Yeah. If one can't bear one's enemy's happiness, then why should one do all sorts of things to make anyone else happy? No? Why should one bother? Of course, this kind of reasoning is not pleasant to the ego, to our normal way of thinking about things. However logical it may be to a third party who doesn't have that kind of aversion towards a third person, who, for whom that person is not an enemy, like they are for us. A neutral person, I think, would be able to see much clearer that this is the case, that it's ridiculous to get angry at something that is causing both the giver and the receiver happiness. But of course, that's what we do. We get upset through habitual pattern of aversion. Is this making sense? When people describe my own good qualities, then I want others to be happy. Want others to be happy too. Should be an extra O on that in some texts. But when they describe the good qualities of others, I do not wish to be happy myself. So there's an inconsistency there, I'm happy for other people when they are describing my own good qualities, but when they're describing the good qualities of others, I don't want myself to be happy. Matlab, I'm reacting in a way that is interfering with my own happiness. So how foolish I am. Behaving in a way that is interfering with my own happiness. This aversion is interfering with my own happiness. Having generated the awakening mind through wishing all beings to be happy, why should I become angry if they find some happiness themselves? Of course, having generated the awakening mind, I'm not sure if Shantideva means that, I don't think he means there that we've already generated bodhicitta, but we are striving to do so. We are aspiring to generate bodhicitta. We are working towards it, which is the wish for all beings to be happy, to be free of suffering. So then it's so inconsistent to be angry if they are generating some happiness in some way. Because it's not that they're generating happiness because they're engaging, it's not that their happiness is at something very harmful. It's not like they're praising an arms manufacturer for, making bombs or something like that. Yeah, of course, if they were, then that would not be a very useful happiness, obviously. But still, even in that case, it wouldn't be appropriate for oneself to be angry at that because of the various reasons already given. What's the point of getting angry? Disturbing one's own mind and perhaps, generating angry thoughts towards others. But, since this person is praising my enemy simply because they like that person and so on and so forth, the only reason I'm disliking it is that I don't like the person being praised, then it is all tremendous inconsistency on my part to behave in that way, when the whole purpose is to bring happiness to others, to be happy at others' happiness. Beings have so little happiness anyway, so why be unhappy? Why generate this ridiculous state of mind of jealousy and aversion when others are being happy? So actually the logic is very powerful, if only our foolish, rigid kind of habitual mind could get used to it. It's like our mind becomes so rigid, so just caught up in a certain way of thinking, so hard to change. Which is why that, our teachers keep on saying how that's one of the attributes of karma that is most dangerous, that we just keep on repeating certain actions again and again and again. So if we kill or steal or whatever, unwholesome actions, often enough, it becomes so ingrained that we just keep on repeating them, and it's just so hard to let go. So this attitude of not being happy when others are praised, for example, it's I don't know whether people have noticed it in their own life. I have in mine, and it's quite embarrassing because often one is one's unhappy when one's brother is praised, or someone whom one is otherwise very fond of, but somehow someone else is being praised, not me, let alone an enemy. I'm not talking about an enemy being praised, even someone, your friend, someone you care for, but they're being praised, and then there's this niggling feeling that, why aren't I being praised? This comes from a sense of, I think, also lack of self-worth, and a sense of impoverishment from one's own side. But one feels such a ridiculous emotion, even in terms of people, in connection with people that one is close to otherwise. One wouldn't call them an enemy. But if your friend is being praised for something, doing something very well, which you also like doing, but they're doing it so well that others are praising them, not oneself, then there is uncomfortable feeling in the mind, very easily arises. Have you had that experience? It's not just people we dislike that we feel jealous about. Very much people we are close to. So this is a very unfortunate state of mind. Careful not to press the wrong button in the meeting. Okay, so His Holiness there is saying, when praise is directed towards oneself, when people speak highly of oneself, one not only feels happy, but it also expects others to be happy when they hear this praise. However, this is totally inconsistent with one's attitude towards others. When people praise others, then not only does one disapprove of others' happiness, but one's own peace of mind and happiness are destroyed as well. So there seems to be an inconsistency when it comes to relating to praise directed towards oneself and praise directed towards others. Then, especially for a bodhisattva practitioner, or someone working towards that, who has dedicated his or her life to bringing about joy and happiness to others and leading them to the ultimate state of happiness, to be jealous of others' happiness and joy is totally inappropriate. In fact, one should feel that if other sentient beings of their own accord, from their own efforts, gain any little experience of happiness and joy here and there, we should be all the more grateful, because without our helping them, they've been able to achieve these joyful experiences and happiness. Of course, if you're really stupid, we could feel unhappy at that too, but they are finding this joy and happiness by themselves, and not through me, not because of me. They already know how to find some happiness themselves, Why aren't I the one who am, causing this all the time? One take it to great extremes. I think the mind is capable of that, of being so foolish and really petty. Yeah. If I wish, having generated the awakening mind, His Holiness commenting on verse 80, having generated the awakening mind through wishing all beings to be happy, why should I become angry if they find some happiness themselves? If I wish for all sentient beings to become Buddhas, worshipped throughout the three realms, then why am I tormented when I see them receiving mere mundane respect? So he's kind of juxtaposing the very vast aspiration that we have, the wonderful aspiration we have, together with this ridiculous mind, which is begrudging them even mundane respect from others. We're unable to cope with them being praised and just receiving a little bit of worldly happiness. So he's showing how really ridiculous that is, how painfully ignorant that is. If a relative for whom I'm caring and to whom I must give many things should be able to find his own livelihood, wouldn't I be happy rather than angry? Wondering what Pema Chodron, what line she takes from this. Pema Chodron's commentary. How ironic to have taken the Bodhisattva vow to work for the happiness of all sentient beings and then get irked by the most trivial interactions. Sometimes all we can do is laugh at our all too predictable reactions. We'd rather travel around the world to help homeless orphans than deal with our own mother or spouse. Shantideva encourages us to fulfill our vow by working wholeheartedly with everyday provocations. Yeah, that's a nice take on it, isn't it? And the translation she uses is also interesting. If you truly wish that beings be enlightened and venerated by the triple world, so then when petty marks of favor come their way, oh why are you in torment? When dependents who rely on you, and whom you are obliged to give support, when they find for themselves the means of livelihood, will you not be happy? Will you once again be angry? And she says, Shantideva, kind of using humor to point out our nonsensical foibles. At least one or two sentient beings are saving us some trouble on the Bodhisattva path by finding happiness all by themselves, even if it's just the happiness of getting compliments we don't feel they deserve. So just as we're relieved when dependent children get jobs and start taking care of themselves, we could be equally relieved when even one sentient being makes less work for the Bodhisattva. And even if you do not want, even if this you do not want for beings, how could you possibly want Buddhahood for them? How could we possibly want Buddhahood for them? Verse 83. If I do not wish for beings to have even this small happiness, how can I ever wish for them to awaken? And where is there an awakening mind? In one who becomes angry when others receive things. And this other translation, how can anyone have bodhicitta and resent the good that others have? How can we say we want people to get enlightened? We're working for that when we, can't even cope with them getting compliments, So he's really very cleverly showing us tremendous inconsistencies in this ordinary way of thinking. Yeah. Again, Shantideva reminds us that justifying resentment or feeling guilty about it, for that matter, stifles the Bodhi heart. There's no practice more important than relating honestly and sanely with the irritations that plague us in everyday life. Verse 84, what does it matter if my enemy is given something or not? Whether they obtain it or whether it remains in the house of the benefactor, in either case, I shall get nothing. So why, by becoming angry, do I throw away my merits, the faith that others have in me, and my good qualities? Tell me, why am I not angry with myself for not having the causes for gain? Yeah. Why don't you resent yourself, you who throw your merit, faith, and all your qualities so far away? Why do you not cultivate the cause of riches? Saying if we're so willing to throw away our peace of mind, we might as well resent ourselves as well. So he's not suggesting we denigrate ourselves, but just acknowledge the way that our mind keeps cycling in the same old patterns and causing ourselves problems. We have a choice. When rewards are given to those we feel are unworthy, we can let it destroy our peace of mind or let it go. Then he reminds us, let alone not having any remorse about the wrongs you have committed, O mind, why do you wish to compete with others who have committed meritorious deeds? This other translation is good. All the evil you have done, you cheerfully neglect to purify. And do you further wish to match yourself with others who have earned more merit? You see what he's saying?
It's not very clear to me.
Okay. Yeah, so he's saying we've committed a lot of unwholesome actions in the past, which is causing us and others suffering now. That we are neglecting to purify. That we're neglecting to feel regret about and purify through the four opponent powers that we've looked at several times, right? So we're refusing to do that. We're refusing to actually get at the root and to destroy the causes of suffering, to purify them. And yet what we are doing stupidly is trying to compete with others or being jealous of others who have committed a lot of meritorious deeds and are therefore able to maybe outshine us in several ways now with their qualities and their ability to help and so forth, and their skills, their gifts, all the things we feel upset about.
The merit they talk about here, those whose merit, so is it the merits of the person who's being praised or the person who's praising?
Both, they can. Yeah, just someone who has merit. Because if you're being praised, then that's a result of merit. And if you're good at praising others, that's also cause of merit, yeah, and the result of merit, that you're still able to, engage in the action of praising. Yeah. So I'm wondering, is it meritorious to praise someone who is engaging in non-virtue? No, that wouldn't be. I don't think that would be meritorious. That's not a meritorious action. Yeah. So am I rejoicing that are you photographing me? Am I rejoicing at being photographed? I should be happier if others are photographed. Yeah. So this is really kind of impeccable logic, really, from Shantideva's side. But it's difficult for us because we just, somehow there's a part of us which, I wouldn't say wants to be miserable, but just keeps on creating the causes to be miserable. Perhaps we just don't have enough faith in our Buddha nature. We think we're somehow miserable lumps of meat, walking around on the planet. And so therefore, there isn't much of worth in oneself. But if one thinks twice, then we should, uplift our minds and not think in these derogatory ways. We'll stop soon and have some discussion, but just a few more verses. So verse 87. Okay, no, before that, yes, just to make it clearer, this point about others' merits and so forth. Pema Chodron says that when we obviously rant on about others' good fortune, how they got the job, the pay increase, the winning lottery ticket, we forget it's due to their previous virtuous actions. Now they're experiencing results and merit of those virtuous actions. And our resentment and gossip, on the other hand, won't bring us any positive results. Quite the opposite, of course. The next few verses are addressing practicing patience when we find ourselves glad that our enemy has fallen on hard times. If unhappiness befalls your enemy, why should this be a cause for your rejoicing? The wishes of your mind alone will not, in fact, contrive his injury. Even if your enemy is made unhappy, what is there for you to be joyful about? Your merely wishing for them to be hurt didn't cause them to be injured. That's an interesting way to look at it. Even if the enemy does suffer as you had wished, what is there for you to be joyful about? If you say, "For I shall be satisfied," how could there be anything more wretched than that? If your hostile wishes were to bring them harm, again, what cause of joy is that to you? And if you then say, "Why? Then I should be satisfied." Are these your thoughts? Is anything more ruinous than that? Then Shantideva reminds us of what we're actually doing to ourselves by thinking erroneously and behaving in these ridiculous, harmful ways. He's saying this hook cast by the fishermen of disturbing conceptions is unbearably sharp. Having been caught on it, it is certain that I shall be cooked in cauldrons by the guardians of hell. Can't get more graphic than that. Yeah, Pema Chodron doesn't go into cauldrons of hell and so forth. She just speaks of won't bring us any contentment. What does His Holiness say about that verse? Anger or hatred is like a fisherman's hook, so it's very important for us to be cautious and ensure that we are not caught by this hook of hatred. So, of course, whether or not we have enough, whether or not we think that actually there are hells with cauldrons, if we think of it, we may not, have that kind of faith in that kind of hell. It's very clear that these states of mind create tremendous suffering after death. They are capable of throwing us into very, very hellish states of existence, which we can't even imagine right now. But there are descriptions of them in the texts, very, very graphic descriptions in the text. We have to understand that it's It's like a long nightmare. It's created by our own mind. Would you mind, Naveen, some hot water? It's very kind of you. Thank you. Would you like some water, Venerable? Or some tea? Yeah. Okay, 7:30 almost, 7:24. The honor of praise and fame will not turn into merit or life. It will give me neither strength nor freedom from sickness. Thank you very much. And will not provide any physical happiness. See, one wants the praise and fame for oneself, but actually it's not going to help. It's not going to become something meritorious for my mind. It's not going to help me if I really want those things and are unhappy when I don't get them. That is not going to be a cause of merit or of long life, because the cause of merit are positive emotions and actions and so forth, and the causes for life are not killing, saving lives and so forth, positive actions like that. So why am I so caught up with wanting praise and honor? These eight worldly dharmas, eight worldly feelings. If I were aware of what held meaning for me, so it's like you're saying, if I were really aware of what really held meaning for me, what value would I find in these things? Like, honor and praise, fame. If all I want is a little mental happiness, I should devote myself to gambling, drinking, and so forth. Yeah. So His Holiness says we should have our priorities right. Seek what's truly of value, what's truly of meaning to our life. Not just mere fame, which after all is empty sounds. One might respond to this by saying this is not true, because when I enjoy fame and people speak highly of me, it gives me a lot of satisfaction. So there is a kind of immediate gratification, but if that is one's soul's purpose, then Shantideva says on that ground, you can also justify drinking all the time or using drugs, because they too provide instant gratification. If for the sake of fame, I give away my wealth or get myself killed, what can the mere words of fame do then? Once I've died, to whom will they give pleasure? So it's saying people go to extreme lengths to try and get fame and just, destroy themselves. The very purpose of seeking fame was to gain a sense of satisfaction. Yet if life itself is sacrificed for it, then there's no one to benefit. So this type of obsession with seeking fame is very childish, very foolish. People can get completely drunk with the idea of fame. Yeah. And then this very powerful verse 93, very strong image there. When their sandcastles collapse, children howl in despair. Likewise, when my praise and reputation decline, my mind becomes like a little child. Any comments so far? Anything anyone would like to say? I'll unmute people online. 9 people online. Anybody would like to say?
question about the verse 80.
80. You know.
Let's say Shantideva would really mean that really talk about the intellectual waking mind. And then there could be cases of be angry when somebody.
So I didn't quite get that, Venerable. You're going to have to say that again. I'm sorry.
So we said that this verse talks mostly about those who are aspiring to be Bodhisattva.
Right,
But
right.
let's say if we understand this literally, understand it as an actual Bodhisattva,
Okay.
generated
Right.
by Bodhicitta and path.
Right.
We think for this type of Bodhisattvas, there could be cases where they could be angry when somebody would find happiness.
Could there be such a case?
Yes, yes.
That they would be angry?
Yes, yes.
Like,
That's the question.
for example?
Like, because in the verse it's saying, like, how is it possible that they could be angry if they're...
Oh, I see. Yes. Right.
So, for example, for the, would they even have enemies?
We generate the awakening mind through vision. Yes. Yeah, he's saying it wouldn't occur
Yes.
to a bodhisattva to think that way. Right. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Which again is the incentive to develop that mind, where we wouldn't even be able to generate unhappiness or anger. Yeah, thank you.
Can you explain?
Well, if we generate this very sublime mind of wishing others to be happy, and not just wishing them to be happy, but wishing to take responsibility, thank you so much, wishing to take responsibility for their happiness by becoming a Buddha oneself, then in the mind stream of such a person, this anger would not arise at all. It would be impossible for that kind of being to be angry if somebody found happiness in their own way. It would just be impossible for them. That would not even cross their minds, because they don't have this ordinary petty mind of competitiveness, jealousy, and so forth that we often have. It just wouldn't occur to them, since their mind, if they were a genuine bodhisattva, had genuinely awakened that mind. Yeah, this is the point that Venerable is making. It's like, you know, how can one say? Yeah, it just wouldn't occur to such a person. Just like it perhaps wouldn't occur to a kind mother to be unhappy when her small child is, you know, gaining some happiness. It just wouldn't occur to be jealous or, you know, unhappy or, you know, something like that. So again, it's like saying, wow, what an extraordinary state of mind bodhicitta is. And we should all aspire for that.
Verse 92.
92?
I have the translation.
Oh, yeah.
So it reads literally as I lose my life, my wealth I squander, all for reputation's sake. I was wondering, beyond the literal reading, can we understand this as my wealth I squander, as I am losing my karmic merits because of my attachment to a good reputation? Is it possible for us to read it that way? It's just for a craving and attachment towards a good reputation. That craving itself makes us lose the merits that we have. That itself has a certain negative karma.
Sure. Yeah, the whole process, it seems, of such a state of mind is one of mistake and therefore leading to more mistakes, more mistaken states of mind governed by ignorance. I mean, that's the root of it, isn't it? Foundational ignorance, primordial ignorance, and then on top of that, or caused by that, the jealousy, the whatever. Verse 92, 93. Yeah, I was, I was reading on the website today, Guardian website. There are riots in Belgium because their team lost to Morocco. So there are riots, a lot of violence and destruction of property. I don't know if anyone's died, but there are riots in Belgium and the Netherlands, I guess, because there are Belgians in Netherlands as well, or Netherlands are joining in. So it's like children howl in despair, right? When their sandcastles collapse, when their team loses. Of course, you could say it's a shock loss or whatever, but Morocco, you think of Morocco, you think of hookahs and Casablanca, or whatever, the movie. And you don't think of a team that can beat Belgium, which is supposed to be the number 2 team in the world. I don't know how, number 2, but anyway, a good European team. How can they lose? It's like, Europe controlled Africa for a long time, and now the Africans are beating us at football, Anyway, it's I don't think the rioters are going through that kind of reasoning, but they're just so desperately unhappy because their team lost and they wanted them to win and to enjoy their beer and so forth, after such a victory, and they lose to, Arabs. So yeah, when we're upset, don't get what we want, we're even prepared to destroy. Of course, as Shantideva said very early in that chapter, unhappiness is caused by this kind of reservoir of anger, is caused by this reservoir of unhappiness that is there in our mind, isn't it? It's like that's there, having found its fuel of mental unhappiness in the prevention of what I wish for. That fuel of mental unhappiness is there in ordinary beings.
Reading these verses also makes me think that being a parent is just such an important.
Yes.
I mean, it's
For the furtherance of the race, yes.
In the sense that so many of these emotions and feelings
Right.
have to do with unmet needs.
Yes, yes,
Which is also kind of the subtext of what it's saying.
yes, yes,
No matter what karma you accumulate in your past life,
yes.
It can be altered in this life, which is even from the ages of 1 to 8. There's been so much research that says that those are crucial formative stages for the child, and even if a child is capable of doing it themselves, parents can create those conditions if you're truly aware and present with the child. But really, the way our societies and lives are structured, who has so much time to give, to your child, and if your child needs more than you can give, do. I mean, for example, like he in 1784, he says, what does it matter if he is given something or not, whether it means, whether it remains in the benefactor's house? In either case, I shall get nothing. Right. So it doesn't matter if I'm not wanting that thing, right? And when do I not want that thing? When I don't have need for that thing.
Yeah, it's very much depends. I mean, if we feel fulfilled from an early age because we receive what the love that we need or crave for, if that is fulfilled in a skillful way by good parents, good parenting, then obviously it gives us a big advantage. I remember the great Gyabje Ling Rinpoche, who in this life, the reincarnation of His Holiness's senior tutor, in this very room here at Tushita, he gave a talk and he spoke at a length that I was quite surprised about, on the disadvantages that accrue if one doesn't receive sufficiently the love of one's parents when one is young. If one doesn't get enough loving kindness, proper care when one is young, then he says it really is a big disadvantage later in life for everything, and also for spiritual practice becomes harder, genuine spiritual practice. So yeah, what you're saying is, I think, very true. We have so much mental unhappiness based on feeling unfulfilled, unloved, etc., etc. Of course, there is also the argument that even if we receive a tremendous amount of care and love due to very strong previous, karma, it can be that such a child does not really, in a sense, receive it, doesn't appreciate it, doesn't receive it. There's an armor there, or whatever. They don't receive it in the same way that a sibling may be receiving it. So it's as though one were not actually loved sufficiently because of the filter. Yeah, it's like you have a filter, so you don't receive that light, that love. But yes, of course, it's a tremendous benefit if parents are skillful, loving parents. But that seems to depend on also whether they themselves received what they needed when they were young. I don't know. Certainly, it seems that 20th century parents, if they went through the traumas of any of the wars, it may, had a deep scarring effect, etc., etc., whatever, European parents anyway. But yes, my point was, and I think your point too, that there are many reasons why we have this reservoir of mental unhappiness, and so many causes, temporary causes, long-term causes, and that's like anything can ignite it, like we find in India. Very small things. I was very surprised when I came back to India and then would read in the papers about such and such event causing a riot to happen, or something someone says, or somebody leaves a piece of the wrong kind of meat outside a masjid or a mosque or a temple, and then people start killing each other. It's like, seems so ridiculous, so crazy, so out of proportion, but it happens. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. Excuse me, we'll take a little break.
Thank you so much.
Nothing to offer, Venerable? Nothing on our altar.
I'm supposed to.
Thank you for coming. So you're going to dinner
Yes,
with
somebody invited the students of Yeshiva Dojo.
Tushita. Please give us love from Tushita.
And also some monks like verbal texture from Nalanda, who also send you best records. Verbal texture from Israel. And you also mentioned that your brother is.
Yeah, my brother is very good.
Thank you so much for teaching this precious text. Please continue. Very, very inspiring.
Yes, we try.
I hope to see you again.
Yes, I very much hope so. We'll meet in Bodhgaya, I hope. Yeah.
Thank you for supporting.
Take care.
Sorry for
Travel
this.
safely. Yeah. Okay. The Venerable Monk was here. He's not. He was here yesterday. Okay. Any comments from our friends online? Aruna ji, Rajesh ji, Vedika, Sagar bhai. Isar, yeah.
Kabirji, just a question. What you were just talking about before this, what verse was that related to?
What verse was it? What verse was it? Nitya? Eight. Well, to several of them, but
Like when, we were just talking about like the family's love, like while growing up, like that part. Is that linked to a specific one? Is it just in general?
well, that is related to the fuel of mental unhappiness, which causes us. Yeah, we were looking at how I was meaning to comment there on verse 93. That when things happen that we don't like, then we become like children. When sandcastles collapse, children howl in despair. And I was relating it to what I read in the paper about Belgians engaging in rioting because their team lost to Morocco in the World Cup. We become like children because you could say the Belgians had constructed this idea of their team as one of the best teams in the world, right? And so forth. Anyway, people like to win. So when you lose to a team like Morocco, which is kind of almost unknown in a sense, then they can't handle it, and they go out and presumably, drinking and then, drunken disorderly behavior on a very grand scale.
Yeah, thanks.
My mind becomes like a little child. Yeah.
Really, I have a question about
Verse 86.
The last two lines say, why do you wish to compete with others who have forgotten their soul? Just wondering, is it unhealthy to compete or rather compare oneself with others in order to motivate oneself?
Yeah. Yeah. Is it a fault to compete or compare oneself with others? Apurva is asking. What do you think, folks? What are the shortcomings of, do you think, competitiveness or competition and so forth? What might be some of the demerits of that?
Especially when it's about, when its purpose is to sort of create more motivation or spur us on to better, more positive action.
Oh, yeah, if it's for with a positive intention.
Yeah, with a positive intention. But would that still count as competition or?
Yeah, it's like healthy desire, healthy competition, unhealthy competition. But one, I guess, would have to be quite skillful about it. Given the people involved, one would have to ascertain, because even there, if one is engaging in healthy competition from a good motivation oneself, how is it going to affect the other person's mind and so on and so forth? If one turns out better than them or gets better marks than them, then the other person could be unhappy. If it's very clear that one is being quite competitive about it and then does better than the other person, even if your own motivation is good, how will it affect the other person? So there can be I think, very skillful ways of gracefully engaging in things and not making others feel that they are have lost or are kind of less than you, even though one might get better marks or, be more effective in something. There's a way of doing it in a sort of, well, what I'm saying is, if one is being competitive, then it's quite hard to be, I think, quite hard to be humble and have humility, or to not get a little, what should we say, puffed up about it a little bit. That's the danger, and then it affects other people. Other people get upset. So one's own motivation might be virtuous, but other people get upset because the way one is going about it isn't very skillful. But if one can somehow carry other people with us in some way, then it's healthier.
To be inspired by or rejoice and get inspired by somebody else's spirit, it's probably different from being competitive.
Yes.
That's why the competition probably is the wrong word to apply it. Or like inspiration.
If you are inspired, then that's great. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't get inspired, we just get jealous.
This is in the context of 83.
83, 84? Which one?
It's in the context of 86 is in the context of 83.
Okay.
How can anyone have Buddha who's angry when another Buddha? So it's in that context.
Yeah, of course. In that, I mean, in this context, it's more towards the negative side. But I was just wondering what the mental reaction was. Positive situation, or could that sort of slip into something negative as well?
I mean, it really depends on the mind of the people involved, doesn't it? One can have the best intention in the world, but it can just disturb other people. It's like.
So I think the idea of having competition is so volatile, it's such a risky term.
Yeah.
That I guess a lot of people, a lot of valid minds are able to process it very differently, and the idea gets.
Comparing is a problematic, I think, process. Comparing, because then there's always something. There'll always be some kind of difference, and if one is better than the other person, if one thinks one is, then that leads to a certain kind of twisted state of mind, or let's say distorted state of mind. And if one thinks one is less than another, that the other is better, that leads to another kind of state of mind, depending. If one already feels impoverished, then one feels kind of depressed and low. If one is a kind of arrogant person and one feels someone is better than one in something, then one gets upset in the sense of anger. So, it's fraught with difficulties. People like educators like Krishnamurti, they really rail against, in a sense, against comparing oneself. He's always asking children, why you compare yourself with another? Don't compare yourself with another. That's kind of devastating to do that.
Just avoid it altogether, rather than try to pass out the nuances of if I do it with good intention, I don't. Avoid that domain altogether, which is what people like to do, rather than trying to find the best possible way to have a competition with somebody else without.
I mean, competition is a label. You could be having sports. You could be having a race, and the organizers or the parents watching their children running or whatever, they could see it as a competition. Some of the children engaging in it might just be doing it for the joy of it. For them, there's no question of competition. They're just enjoying running. And, it's like a game for them. It really is fun for them. So that, competition doesn't arise. But in the ordinary mind, it does arise, Wouldn't it be amazing to just play a game like football or anything, just enjoying the game itself? It didn't matter how many times the ball went into one's own net, you know, it would just be a game. It would be you're just enjoying the sport of football, because actually it's very enjoyable. At least I find it very enjoyable, even at my age, to kick a ball around. I find it amazing. But if one is has a different perspective on it, then one's upset every time one gets scored against, and while ecstatic when one's own team scores. And it's very easy to lose the joy of the game and just be very oriented towards winning. That becomes very problematic. Then one really suffers some disappointment when it doesn't go our way. Yeah, so just for the joy of it, if we are engaging in it, that would be amazing. And then if someone scored a good goal against you, it would just be great, because you're just enjoying this, you know, the skill and the flow of it. It really doesn't matter to you, because you're not playing for, you know, to win. It's playing to play. I think that's what the Olympics was supposed to be about. That's the participation or something like that. It turned into something else. There was something in the preamble or something of the original, what is it? The vision, or the what's it called? When something is set up, your mission statement of the Olympics was something very interesting, I think, to remember. And it doesn't have to do with winning.
Always, higher, faster.
Well, that of course is there, higher, faster, and so forth. But there was something else I can't remember. But we've distorted everything. Everything has become competitive, you know, everything. The war between men and women, the war between people in general, everything's become competitive. You know? Since short-lived sounds are inanimate, they cannot possibly think of praising me. But, of course, the other person says, but as it makes the bestower of that praise happy, my reputation is a source of pleasure for me. Then he says, Shantideva says, whether this praise is directed at myself or somebody else, how shall I be benefited by the joy of the one who bestows it? Since that joy and happiness is theirs alone, I shan't obtain even a part of it. And if I do find happiness in their happiness, then surely I should feel the same way towards everyone. And if this was so, then why am I unhappy when others find pleasure in that which brings them joy? Therefore, the happiness that arises from thinking I am being praised is invalid. It's only the behavior of a child. Praise and so forth distract me. Yeah, so this is a very important verse. Praise and so forth distract me and also undermine my disillusionment with cyclic existence. I start to envy those who have good qualities, and all the very best is destroyed. Therefore, are not those who are closely involved in destroying my praise and the like also involved in actually protecting me from falling into the unfortunate realms? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's like that same kind of logic that the enemy, the person who harms you and returns harm for all the good you've done them, that person is your greatest guru. That kind of logic. I'll have a name, Bodhisattva logic. 8 verses of thought transformation logic. Crazy wisdom logic. Yeah, this is wonderful. And praise can be very uncomfortable, actually, when people, so it's quite uncomfortable, especially when, of course, people overdo it nowadays. in society, you go to places and then people make a big deal of praising you in front of others. It's all like a bubble. It all feels very false. Because you see, the other thing is that oneself knows one's own faults. So when people are just praising you, then part of your mind realizes, well, okay, but I'm also this, that, and the other, So those who are
Can you speak a little bit about that?
yeah.
Why that thought?
Well, I'm being praised, meaning being attached to that. Yeah. Of course, you could take it at a deeper level and say that there's no inherently existing I, then who in heaven's name is being praised anyway? They're praising a label, they're praising, because people are praising what they appears to them to be an inherently existing person. That's the other thing. So they're actually praising a hallucination. If you look at it from the viewpoint of emptiness. When I praise somebody, I'm praising them based on my perception of them as an inherently existing person, because I'm viewing them ignorantly. So then I'm praising something that doesn't exist actually. And that person, by being happy at praise, is also happy because they are clinging to themselves as a solid, praisable entity. I who am striving for freedom do not need to be bound by material gain and honor. So why should I be angry with those who free me from this bondage? Yeah, who are, stealing from me and so forth. I should be happy they're doing that because I'm striving for freedom. I don't need to be bound by those things. He's saying, why should I be angry? He's not saying that, yeah, how wonderful if they come and steal everything I have, and render me, homeless and so forth. He's not necessarily saying that, because that for an ordinary person wouldn't be beneficial for their spiritual development. If one took over, if that happened. But he's saying that I shouldn't be attached to material gain and honor, And those who are stealing things from me are helping me loosen that attachment. They help me see the disadvantages of being attached. So therefore, those who wish to cause me suffering are like Buddhas, bestowing waves of blessing. As they open the door for my not going to an unfortunate realm, why should I be angry with them? Wow. He's comparing the harm giver to Buddhas bestowing waves of blessing. One might think that's going a little too far. But the logic is there. If one accepts the logic, that makes sense. We have to stop soon. Reason being, I have a relation who's coming to my place and I don't want to be too late for dinner. But anyway. Buddhas bestowing. This is like Rinpoche saying that suffering is like, I should like suffering in the same way that I like ice cream. I should have the same feeling for suffering as I have for ice cream, if you like ice cream. In my case, I'd have to say gajar halwa, and that's quite difficult. Yeah. What if someone should obstruct my merit, my gaining merit? So Shantideva says, with them too, it's incorrect to be angry. But since there's no fortitude similar to patience, surely I should put it into practice. If due to my own failings, I'm not patient with this enemy who is obstructing my merit, then it's only I who am preventing myself from practicing this cause for gaining merit. You see, we see things in terms of the other, what the other is doing. The other is to blame. Here he's showing us always that it's our mind. The attitude we have changes the thing completely, how we look at it. You know? Someone's harming me, someone throws a stone, I get hurt, it's their fault. That's our logic. It's their fault that I'm suffering. That's because we aren't able to see it in any other way, that somebody has, harmed my precious body. We're unable to look at it in any other way, that it's teaching us something, showing us, shortcomings of samsara, showing us, karmic causation, showing us how the other person is caught up in their negative emotions. None of that occurs to the mind that is just caught up with its own problem. My little suffering, my problem, caused by that person, caused by somebody else. That's our problem. Everything is, somebody else is to blame. Something else or somebody else. Yeah. If without it something doesn't occur, and if with it it does come to be, then since this enemy would be the cause of patience, how can I say that the enemy prevents it? Yeah, without an enemy, there's no patience. Due to an enemy, we have patience. We can't practice patience with people who are very kind to us all the time. It's just impossible. It doesn't arise. It's only someone who gives us a little problem or some episode in life, which, whether it's being trapped in a traffic jam or whatever it is, that is what gives us the chance to practice patience, isn't it? Why do we need to practice patience if the road between here and the airport is totally free and we even don't have to stop at any traffic lights and so forth? How is that a cause of patience? Which is a virtue and which is very great quality of mind. If all we have are good circumstances, we can't develop that. And then, of course, when we do have a problem, it becomes very difficult. Very difficult. I remember there was some, I think, Dutch or some people who came to Root Institute in the early years, and we didn't have adequate mattresses in those days. You can imagine what kind of mattresses we might have had. And they were so upset. They just couldn't sleep at all. And they were very upset because the mattresses weren't what they're used to. And we thought it was perfectly adequate, but yeah. I would get upset with people who demanded hot water for showers, even in the cold weather. And now, of course, I see my foolishness, because now I crave warm water, hot water, at, beginning in October. And before I was so unsympathetic with people who were used to having, hot water. So anyway, we find it very easy to be upset and don't see the role of our own minds, because that would be painful. That would require some change of perspective, change of behavior. Yeah, change of behavior also. Because if we want happiness, we have to create the causes of happiness. If we don't want suffering, we have to stop creating the causes of suffering. And if we look at our actions, then quite a few of our actions from a Buddhist perspective create suffering. And if we want to get to the real root of it, then we have to stop seeing things as inherently existent. We have to start seeing everything as like a dream experience, and not relating to it in a very heavy heavy-handed way. That's what we really need to start doing. Okay. Anything else before we end? Okay, so shall we dedicate? So we dedicate that we may deeply understand, take to heart Shantideva's advice, realizing, as he mentioned at the beginning of the chapter, that one moment of anger has the potential to destroy so much positive energy that may have been accumulated over a long period of time, and that patience really is a wonderful and essential quality to develop for the just even mundane happiness in life, let alone for the being striving on the Bodhisattva path. So we need patience. We really need it. May we develop it. So we pray that we're never separated from these kind of teachings and from teachers, and may the authentic great masters have long and healthy lives. May all their wishes be fulfilled. Then we pray for people who have recently died. On the 24th, Suresh Jindal ji passed away, and also Mirza Yassin Beg of the Midland bookstores. And then today, heard the news that Deepti passed away, related to Nitya here, comes to the center. So we pray for them that they have good passage to meaningful, positive life, future life, preferably perfect human rebirth, where they can connect with authentic teachings that transform the mind and lead to Buddhahood. We pray for those who are left behind, those who are saddened, grieving, feeling bereft. May they quickly find comfort and ease. And we pray that the horrific wars that are happening in the world, they quickly come to an end, and that beings think of benefiting one another rather than harming one another. And that also collectively beings develop more and more wisdom, and influential people realize how important it is to work towards mitigating the effects, the causes, eliminating the causes of destructive climate change, which is destroying our planet, destroying our home. And in the meantime, may our lives, every day of our lives, be meaningful for ourselves and others. May we continue the practice of watching the mind and averting disturbing emotions before as they arise. Thank you very much.